Hello and welcome back to Creepy Cutie Crafty. Welcome back to yet another crafting video with me, Heather. Hi guys, how you doing this week? So yeah, it is, well, I'm filming this on the Tuesday, and it's going to be going out on the Friday because it is Good Friday, and so that means time with my family and time having hot cross buns and things like that. And it's again time to start discussing what kind of traditions there are in different parts of the world. So do you guys have hot cross buns where you are? Do you have simnel cake where you are? What kind of Easter celebrations do you do? Here it's mostly chocolate bunnies and chocolate eggs, but you know, I know there is a lot more links to other Christian ceremonies and things. But yeah, it's an interesting one. But before I go into deep on that one, I was going to show you this. So I've managed to get most of this. Well, I've got all of this grid done here. This is what I started in my last video, as you saw me do. And now I'm just coming in with diagonal lines. So just using my Sashiko needle. I really do need to get my leather thimble on because sewing through all these layers is a little bit painful. And I have been using my palm thimble a little bit, but because the layers are so thick I can't do multiples at a time without it getting stuck. I do have my pliers on hand should I need to unstick them. Need a bit of extra force to undo the stitches, or well, to take the needle out of the fabric, but it is quite thick. But that's, you know, that's what you get for having denim. And I'm using denim because I want to make this nice and sturdy and also nice and long lasting. Oh, yep, anybody who's new here, hi, this is my very sort of wibbly wobbly Sashiko stitching, and I'm using that to decorate some pieces of recycled or reused denim from old jeans, and I'm going to be turning this into a handbag. I don't set myself tiny tasks, I set myself ginormous tasks and then get overwhelmed and wonder what I'm doing. But I'm ploughing on ahead with it, and it's going well so far. My lines are a little bit wibbly wobbly, but that's absolutely fine, I can live with that. It's you know, there are areas where it's a bit off, but I'm fine with that. I'm going to add some other stitch patterns all over the place, and there's a couple of other little sorts of motifs I want to do. I'm thinking about bringing some anime type characters in there, something cute, I think, not something too overwhelming, but I think it would be nice to do that. And I am trying to go through multiple layers here. So when you're doing Sashiko, the idea is that you do like long lengths of stitches going through. Generally speaking, you'd have one of these things on. This is a palm thimble, and that's what you'd push your needle with as you're working. But as I say, because I've got so many layers of denim here, it is a little bit tricky to do that. So I've done these centimetre square boxes, and I'm filling this up with diagonals. So it's going to be diagonals going this way on this one, and then on alternate ones it's going to be going in the other direction. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. But yes, it's coming together quite nicely, I think. But yes, I think it's going to be eye-catching and unusual. I am really looking forward to seeing it brought together. But it is a bit of a struggle, and my hands are complaining a little bit about all the extra stitching that I'm doing through very, very tough denim. But it's nice to be able to recycle this. As you can see, I've got like this sort of shadow of a pocket here where the legs were lightened in the washes and things like that, but the pocket itself remained dark, and I kind of find that interesting, and I'm wondering, you know, why the lighter areas are lighter. Was that part of the original design? You know, because it's that fashionable sort of stone washed idea, isn't it? Or is it because ow, straight into my finger, ouchie. Okay, I haven't drawn blood, so not worth the fuss. But on the back just pulling these a little bit loose so that if it gets washed, the stitches don't bunch up. Now, as I've been going, I've been pulling it looser so that it doesn't have too much sort of pillowing and bunching, so that it doesn't put itself too tight and change the shape of the bag. But it's still going to do that a little bit, just because that's the nature of the beast, really. Yes, that's why I'm doing the stitching before I do cutting it down to the correct size. So I'm basically just making a ginormous sheet here with stitches on it, and that will, once I've done all the stitches on it, then I'm going to cut it down to the correct size for the bag construction. Because if I do it now, and if I cut this down to size first, when I came to doing the construction of the bag, the actual shape might have changed. So that's why I'm doing this bit first, and then doing the shape of the bag itself. So it does make sense. It's like ages ago last summer I did my Christmas stockings projects that I sent to my niece and my nephew, and they were sort of loosely shaped first on the sort of shape of the boot, and then after I'd stitched them with embroidery and quilting and all sorts of stuff, then I cut them to the correct shape, and then I sewed them, because with the embroidery stitching, it does change the shape of the fabric overall, doesn't it? It sort of puckers and pinches in and all sorts of things. So it's worth, getting the decorative things done first, and then doing the shaping for whatever you're going to construct out of it. At least that's how I'm doing. I mean, some people, they want to construct it first and then add on the decorative touches, because that's just how some people want to do it, and it's fully workable, and it makes makes sense if that's how you want to do it. But then you have the issue of getting distorted shapes and so on. So yeah, but then I suppose if you're doing embroidery, you know what you're doing, because like I keep saying, I am not an expert. I am literally just mucking around and making things that I think look pretty. But you can get an item of clothing or whatever you want to make, and then put it into a hoop. And I suppose that's part of the reason why we have the hoops, is so that if you do pull it tight, it doesn't distort once you take it out of the hoop as well. But then you do have a little bit of distortion, because people pull their stitches nice and tight, and then it's still going to sort of pinch in, isn't it, slightly? I don't know, I may be burbling, but like I say, I am by no means an expert. If you want an expert on Sashiko, I very, very highly recommend looking up the green wrapper. They are very, very skilled with their embroidery, Sashiko embroidery, Sashiko decoration, and I really like watching their channel. I mean, there are lots of lovely creative souls out there using all kinds of different embroidery styles. I mean, I was watching Bernadette Banner to learn about gold work, and then I was watching Creating Craft with Christine, and they're doing sort of slow stitch projects, doing like hexy quilts for like craft table surfaces and things. And it's everyone's got such amazing, beautiful ideas. It's always worth checking out what people are doing, and also never being too fixed in your own idea of what you should be doing, so that you can go out and explore. I like to sort of try and combine different kinds of embroidery, and I'm one of those people who I will get an idea, I will watch somebody's video, or I'll read a book, or I'll see an article about creating using embroidery, one particular method or particular style or particular tradition, and then I'll go and do a deep dive and I'll make 20 things using that one style, and then I'll put it aside, go and do something else, and then come back later and think, okay, how can I combine these, how can I put these things together? It may not be perfect for the sort of purist embroiderers and things out there, because you know, I do know there are some very not uptight, very adhered to their idea that, you know, if you're doing one type of white work you can't use certain stitches, or if you're doing one type of Sashiko you can't do XYZ. But every single tradition, as long as you know, recognise that you're not being a purist, I don't see why you can't experiment and you can't have fun and see what happens when you throw mud, or in this case embroidery thread, at the wall. But yeah, I am very much not a purist on any of this, and I am very much a learner, and I do like, you know, playing around with these things, playing around with images, playing around with motifs, playing around with whatever, you know, I'm having a go at the time. So this is a very sort of slow process, but what I'm doing is I'm starting with the diagonal line and then just following the diagonal, and whatever point it goes to I'm bouncing off and doing the opposite direction. I am going to have one red thread in here, I think, because this is your more sort of traditional white Sashiko thread, and I'm going to try and do most of this with just the traditional white Sashiko thread, but I'm going to come back with one or two red threads sort of dotted around here and there, just because, you know, I think it's going to be interesting, and also it's a nice contrast with the blue, isn't it? So yep, so I've done from there to there already, so I'm doing a jump from there to there, so that's the next nearest point. But on the back I am trying to keep that a little bit loose so that it doesn't pull itself tight. Yeah, I think it's looking pretty good. I did go for fairly large stitches this time. Next time I might try and do something with smaller stitches, just so I can vary up. And of course these stitches also, they're not just decorative, they're also there to reinforce the fabric and make the fabric a little bit stronger. So if I did this on like the knees of some jeans that have worn out, it would reinforce those worn out areas. So if I've got, on this one you can see here, I've got this little area that's worn out and you can see my finger almost through it. But if that was worn through, I could put a smaller piece of fabric behind it and do Sashiko stitches over it, because that was the knee of some jeans. However, I'm going to stitch over it just with the white thread, and maybe I'll make a feature of that. I don't know yet. I'm winging it, literally. I am once again winging it, trying to see what ideas stick with my my tiny mind, and see what happens. It is fun, and it is quite. It's kind of the epitome of slow stitching, in my humblest of opinion, and it is precise without being so precise that it looks like it's done by a machine. Anybody who's been here before on my channel knows that I have a very big thing about machines, and machines doing the jobs of humans, but I won't discuss that too much further, and we shall see what happens. But yes, I don't want to keep talking about the same old thing. It's flogging a dead horse, as they say. So yes, I think maybe I should stick to stitching for the moment. But I know that you guys all have very similar opinions with me about allowing machine minds to do our thinking for us. But I'm not going to go too further in that one. It's so tempting to go into like a tirade about X, Y, Z, but it's one of those things where that's not the only thing I want to talk about. Right, so you can see I'm getting towards the end of the thread there, and that end is very, very frayed from going through all the fabric already. So what I'm going to do is go in there, and then don't put it super tight, because again I don't want it to pucker. Come back through, sort of halfway through the stitch, and then I pass it underneath. I know some people don't do the passing underneath. I do. That's just my personal taste. Pull that nice and tight, and then pass it into there, and then do the same on this one here. Come through the sort of the same hole, pass it underneath, and then put it through there. And again, one more, just for security. And then pass that through, and in we go. And then on the back, I'll pull that through, hold on, like that, so it's nice and firm. And then you can see I've done quite a few snips here previously, so I'm going to be doing another long snip there so that it doesn't pull through. Yep, I've got my lovely autumnal themed blanket on my knee again. The warmth has come back again to this lovely little damp island we've got here, but it's still quite cold, especially in the evenings and things. But yeah, there we go. Anyway, so yeah, I was talking about Easter, wasn't I? We've got, well, when you see this video, it will be Good Friday, so that will be sort of the bank holiday weekend starting here in the UK. But then on Sunday we're going to be having our Easter festivities. Now I'm not a believer of any particular religion, so you know, it's just a nice day to have with the family and to think about doing some gardening and all that sort of stuff. But I know that other people do believe, and you know, that's absolutely fine. That's their choice. But I'm not going to, you know, decry anybody for doing certain things. However, it is fun. Well, for me particularly, somebody who likes looking at sort of traditions and customs and things, to look and see what kinds of traditions people have. In the United Kingdom, obviously we have the eggs, and then more recently we started to have bunnies and things. When I was growing up, it was all just Easter eggs. There was no Easter bunny. I mean, we talked about the Easter bunny, but not really overly much. But then again, I did grow up within a Christian household, so you know, my views are slightly different from everybody else's. But as I've grown up, I found out about other sort of traditions and things, and you know, when I was growing up, having hot cross buns was very, very traditional here in the UK. That was for Good Friday, and that's when you had these spiced, enriched dough buns, and they smell amazing. They are absolutely gorgeous, and they're all sort of lovely and aromatic when they're warm. But unfortunately for me, they have raisins in them, raisins and sultanas I cannot eat. Which is it's quite interesting, because you know, here in the UK now we've got other forms of hot cross buns now on sale, so like chocolate buns or lemon buns and things like that. But I would love to know, do you guys have hot cross buns in your country? What do you have on Easter Sunday? on Good Friday rather. There's also a cake that I've seen made, but I've never actually made myself, and that's called a simnel cake, and I think it's more of a European tradition. However, there are folks here in the UK who do make lovely simnel cakes, again using lots of marzipan, and it's got eggs on the top, but also those eggs are seen as representative of the 12 apostles from the Bible stories. It's interesting though, because I'm going to state the bleeding obvious, which is before anybody else needs to correct me in the comments. I know that Easter was what Christians call Easter was laid over the Jewish Passover, and then in terms of the other European countries, when Easter started to become popular, or started to become part of their traditions, or Christian traditions, it sort of overlaid the other more pagan traditions, more nature-inspired tradition. That's why we have the bunnies and we have the eggs and things. It's interesting because I've seen some Christian sermons where they talk about how the eggs represent the stone being unrolled from the tomb, and others about it being about new life and being about whatever, but we know that it's all about the rites of spring, about fertility, about the world coming back to life after winter and all this sort of stuff, and it is interesting to see how certain traditions have been overlaid other traditions, and how they've had to sort of co-opt them for their own. And it's interesting that nobody has actually pointed out that the name Easter isn't Christian. From what I understand, it comes from Oster or Easter, which is the pagan or Wiccan or whatever rite of spring, which is fascinating. So your Easter eggs literally have nothing to do with a certain religion. It's all to do with new life in spring. But it's fascinating. But it is also fascinating how some folk, they either get very defensive about it or use it as proof that one religion has superseded the other, or one belief system has superseded. I don't understand that. It's just a different way of looking at the same thing, isn't it? And celebrate the differences rather than trying to do each other down. I think it is fascinating though. But yeah, you didn't think there was so much to talk about one little word, did you? But yeah, but we're getting towards slightly warmer, slightly sunnier days here in the UK. So of course me and my other half are starting to look at sorting the garden out, putting more plants out and things. We used to grow our own veg, and I really do like growing my own veg, but for various reasons, in many cases my ill health, we haven't done so much in recent years, but I'm desperate to get back in the garden and get all the weeds out and get the plants put down, get some lettuces and some beans and some peas out there, and get growing again, because we've got a lovely big garden, and we don't utilise it anywhere near as much as we want to. then again, you know, we're all trying to scrabble for whatever free time we have, and sometimes when you have free time you don't want to be labouring in the garden, but at the same time, like I said on Monday's episode, sometimes the labour is the whole point of the process, don't you think? I think so. Anyway, are you guys getting back into your gardens? What kind of things are you growing? Are you more of a flower person, or do you like to have veggies growing and things? We used to grow lots of lettuces and cucumbers and all kinds of yummy things, but we've now got to get back into getting the garden looking nice again. But there we go. Right, so jumping on to the next one again, and I'm going to be done with this very soon because I'm going to be moving on to the next part of the project. I'm nearly at my half an hour, so I'm trying to do like 2 projects in an episode. Does that work for you guys? Would you prefer to see me working on one project from start to finish? Because I kind of worry that would be a bit too repetitive. Or are you happy for me to chop and change like this? I'd love to know. I like how this is looking, and I like doing multiple things at the same time, because apart from anything else, it stops me from getting too what's the word, monotonous, too many of the same thing happening over the time. I don't know, I do like sharing multiple, you know, projects at the same time, and I do try to keep ahead with them as well, but can't always do that. It's a busy time of the year. It's going to be the start of the financial year in a few days, and my other half, working in a financial institution, knows that this time of the year is always going to be the busiest. So happy Easter. Now here's 17 hours of work a day. Not quite 17 hours of work a day, I am exaggerating a little bit, but it does sometimes feel like that. Anyway, but yeah, it's an interesting time of year. And of course we've got, you know, as I say, Squinks' GCSEs coming up. They're back at school again over their Easter holiday day today, and they're doing some extra revision and extra study and extra genning up for their coursework and for their exams for their GCSEs, and very soon they're going to be starting to do their GCSEs, and then very soon after that, once they've finished their exams, we're going to be going on our trip to London. Somebody mentioned, you know, am I going to be filming when I go to London on our grand trip? Yes, I am. I'm going to be filming as much as I can, and I will take some stitching with me so that I can do it whilst I'm there. But I'm also fully aware that I'll be chasing after Squinks and trying to stop them from spending all my money. But yeah, it's going to be fun. And I'm going to seek out some yarn shops and some sewing, embroidery stores, and also, like as I say, I'm going to go to Liberty's, which is the one thing that I've wanted to do. This one thing I wanted to do since last year, for my birthday, because I was 50 last year, and I've just had my 51st birthday, so you know it's a bit overdue. But yeah, but I'm looking forward to finding some places, and if you guys have any recommendations, just let me know down in the comments. Right, I'm just going to get to the end of this row, and I will be finishing this off screen, so yeah, again, keep your eye out for the end of the video, and you'll see how far I've got. And then next week I'll be starting on a new pattern for this. But yes, so let me know what you think of this down in the comments. The last stitch coming up for now anyway, and then that can go through there, and I'm just going to open it out so you can see how far I've got. I think having that little bit of red has made a nice little little bit of interest in there. Ignore these yellow threads. Those are the tacking slash basting, because I've got a bit of linen on the back just to hold it in place. But yeah, I'm liking that so far. And I'm going to do another sort of square of different patterns in different areas all over the back here. But we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I'm going to come back in a bit and continue with my white work project, which for some reason I can't actually say at the moment. I'll be putting this down and getting on with my white work project. I got through it. Yay! Anyway, I'll see you in a bit. Bye! Okay, so welcome back. It's now Friday morning that I'm filming, so I've gone for 2 days without finishing this all off. But yeah, it's been a busy week. It's the Easter holidays now, so the museums are all very, very busy. I got to have Wednesday at the Museum and Art Gallery, which is a nice change for me, because normally I'm in the Museum of Science and Industry, so you know I get to move around a lot. But I'm well, back and doing my stuff and sharing it with you now. So today's Good Friday. So it's interesting because, I mean, like I was saying earlier on, there are sort of different traditions for different parts of Easter and stuff in different parts of the world. And this morning we had our hot cross buns, which are like sort of spice buns with bits and pieces in, but unfortunately we managed to find some buns that didn't have raisins, so we had chocolate ones instead, because unfortunately I can't eat raisins and things. So we had those for breakfast. It's interesting because it's like the dough is squishier than normal like bread dough, but it is still a sort of bread dough. It's I believe it's a enriched dough, so it's got egg in it as well as the other sort of bits and pieces that you have for oops, that's gone wrong there. Doesn't matter, I'll just post this through here, as well as the normal stuff you have for bread. So it's much richer, but it does make it a little bit squishy as well sometimes, but it's nice toasted with some butter on and things. But yes, so it's interesting though, because it's like I know that, you know, not many countries have hot cross buns, but they are a very nice treat to have. Right, so what I'm doing here, this is continuing on with my white work piece, and I'm going to try and make a little bit of a fan detail on the edge here. I've already gone wrong with it, but I'll show you what I'll do in a second. So behind here, I'm just going to pass this through the white weaving that I've done before. If I can keep a hold of this, the needle, of course, that would help. So I'm going to go through the needle there so that it comes out without having the stitch visible on the front. And then, oops, daisy, just knocked a clip off, because of course I have. Hold on. And then I can bring that back up out here. Oops, making sure not to get any knots on it, which is exactly what it's just done. Or maybe it's just got itself too short, I don't know. Let's see, can we get that through? There we go. And then I'm going to go in there and then start to weave. So in, out, in, out, in, out, in. That's right down here in the corner. Having to not to pull too hard, because as you can see it's trying to pull these stitches in just up the back there. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting my needle and pushing them back a little bit, just so that they don't lose their shape. Pull that down to there, pass it through my stitches on this little bit of weaving here. So there you go, that keeps it nice and straight, and then come back out through the, so where that was over before, I've now got to go under, so over, under, over, oops daisy, under, and oops, over, like that. That's the second row of stitches done. Pass it through the weaving. By the way, yeah, I managed to finish most of this bit here. I think it looks quite nice. I've got it a little bit skew off in the centre, but I did sort of a mix of the white stitches and the variegated stitches. I haven't finished this bit over here, but I really do like this sort of white woven, and then stitches, then woven, then the weave. I think I would like to do some more of that, but maybe in one of the later areas of stitching, so one of the bigger borders around the outside edge. We shall see. So is that right? It is right, but it looks a bit weird. I think it's going to come together when I finish the stitches off, so trying to again use my needle to get things looking nice, and then bring that through there. And then put that through there, and this time I'm going to come up, there we go, and then put my weave through there. This is the first time I'm doing this, so I've only seen it done, and I'm obviously not going to be getting my head around it just yet, but I think it's a nice one. I think I definitely need more practice doing things like this though. Just push those down a bit. There we go. That goes over. Then, oops, under. Yeah, it's starting to come together quite nicely now, so let's put that through there. So that brings it nicely there. And then I think maybe what my problem here is that I'm going into the top here, so because I've got this one going over, I need to come under, which I will do next time because I didn't think of that until just then. So I'll know that to do that next time. Maybe that'll make a difference. Again, this is my proper piece of white work, but I am also, you know, still learning. There are sort of little errors, so this one is slightly off center because I miscounted here, so I need to, you know, count the next ones more carefully. I'm going to leave it as it is, as a little reminder of something that I need to improve on, but it's I think it looks pretty good. And like I said before, when you're doing stitching like this, or this is mostly me I'm talking about, when you're doing stitching like this, you are more likely to spot your own errors and things. Doesn't mean it's not a good piece, doesn't mean that, you know, I haven't learned and I haven't done something nice. It just means that I'm seeing things that maybe other folk aren't seeing quite so much, because, you know, I think it looks good. It's just that I'm also aware that there are things that I would like to improve on. But isn't that, you know, that's a good thing, isn't it? Because then you're constantly getting better, you're constantly building yourself up, you're constantly growing. Right, so if I go through there this time and then come up in here like that, this should make it a bit more even. So let's see, that looks a bit better, I think. And yeah, I'm doing it. It's looking nice. It's not looking as webby as I was hoping, but it's looking good. I'm going to take this all the way up to the end, I think. I was thinking of doing this with like white stitches, but with the variegated thread as the weaving. But I don't think it needs it. I think, you know, having some areas that are just white is a good thing. So again, push those back on both sides, and off we go again. At least off I go again. So yeah, I mean, we had hot cross buns just now. Sometimes they're nice with a little bit of butter on top, and the spicing and things is nice. It's the chocolate ones, obviously they've got chocolate in them, but they've still got the spicy mix that the fruited hot cross buns have, and it's a lovely sort of spice mix. It's a very sort of warm flavour. If you've never tried them, I do highly recommend it. I did once try making hot cross buns without fruit in, just like the plain bread, and they turned out really nice, but quite heavy. That's the only thing. I think the fruit helps to sort of lift them a little bit. However, I mean, I was talking about, yeah, like Christmas and Easter traditions. I found out, well, somebody told me this morning that in America, although you have like egg hunts and things like that, you don't really get the big chocolate eggs that we do here in the UK. Do you get big chocolate eggs? I mean, we get massive eggs, massive hollow eggs, that's have little bits of other chocolate inside them, and you know, sometimes the eggs are decorated, or they've got bits and pieces on the outside and stuff. But are those a British only thing? Is there an equivalent where you are? Is that you know, a British only thing? Because I would be so surprised if that was the case, because you'd think that other countries would have a chocolate egg tradition as well. It's very strange. Of course, I could be wrong, and I could be completely making this all up, but I'd love to know. Let me know what you think. Right, so from here, I'm going to start with the sort of more decorative egg stitching. So, edge sticking. I've got eggs on the brain now, haven't I? And I'm going to go in on 3 holes out. So I think I may have gone in too soon with that one. That one is there, coming in, oopsie daisy, there, and then bringing my stitch up to the hole that's adjacent to the thread and pulling through, and then stitch down here. I was thinking of doing like an edge stitch, which was doing like a chain stitch around the edge, but I think it's so teeny tiny. I think that would be a bit overwhelming. I don't know, but maybe next time. Maybe I'll do that on the outside edge. I don't know, or the outside egg. So yeah, let me know what kind of traditions, what Easter traditions are normal where you are, because it is interesting. I grew up, as I was mentioning before, I grew up in a Christian household, where being of that tradition was very much normalised, and so, you know, on Good Friday we went out to the church to mourn the passing, and then came back on the Sunday to celebrate, you know, Easter Sunday and so on. But it's interesting to see how these traditions have all been laid over each other to make, you know, quite a secular sort of celebration of things. But I'm very confused as to whether or not the traditions that are from one part of the world are transposed to another. I mentioned last week we have simnel cake, which is a very rich Easter cake that has marzipan eggs on the top, which aren't supposed to be eggs at all. They're supposed to be like representative of the 12 apostles and things like that. But then you've got the overlaying of, well, you got the overlaying of the Christian tradition over the Jewish Passover tradition, and then you've got the overlaying of the Christian tradition over the pagan traditions as well. So it's an interesting one. It's kind of how many celebrations can we mash up into this one celebration, and then how does that become normalized? It's a really interesting one. It's kind of like, it wasn't done intentionally, but at the same time it's deliberate, so that, you know, the last religion standing, I guess. It's an interesting one, but I'm not going to talk too much about that because I don't want to talk about, you know, that side of things too much, because I know that everybody's got their different points of view. But it'll be interesting to know what kind of points of view, what kind of traditions do you guys have. And of course, you know, as well as the sort of more secular, more, you know, widespread social traditions, you've also got personal sort of family traditions, haven't you? Like with my family, when we come to Yule, and I mentioned us doing Yule Brinner every year on the shortest day, the longest night, and we always wind up having a breakfast of some kind for dinner, which is our very silly tradition, but it's now a tradition in our family, and that's what we do. It's fun, and it's always good to celebrate our differences, isn't it? Celebrate what makes us different, as well as all the things that make us the same. But yeah, I may be blithering, but same as usual. So yeah, you can see I'm doing a little tiny sort of buttonhole stitch type thing here. I think it's nice to sort of neaten off the edge of what we've got going on. But I think it looks nice. It's also one of those ones where you've got to try and make sure that you keep it the same. So last time I kept on going on to the next row, but on this one I've managed to keep it the same so far. It's slow and methodical, but again, this is slow stitch. This is not speedy stitch. I'm not making a blanket in 20 minutes because I want to enjoy the process. Yes, don't worry, I'm not going to start talking about AI again. I know I keep going off on that one, but I'm going to try and avoid talking about it too much, because, you know, I don't want to be talking about the same thing over and over and over again. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, last week I was working at the Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery, and I was enjoying talking to the visitors about the art on display and about the other bits and pieces that we have going on. And it's very different from what I normally talk about, but it's also the area that I am most interested in, and I do love the museums because there's quite a few of them. Birmingham is one of those places where an awful lot of stuff has happened there, an awful lot of history and a lot of personal history is and social history is located there, but it doesn't get the credit for it because it's Birmingham, it's the second city. It's, you know, people don't blow their own horns too much because that's just the way that Birmingham is, and yet you have so many amazing things going on there and so many amazing people from there that it deserves celebrating, I think. But yes, but we've got lots of pre-Raphaelite artworks there. Now I'm not a huge fan of the pre-Raphaelites. I like their work and I can appreciate what they've done and all this sort of stuff, but at the same time they had some very funny ideas. They were very much kind of trying to reassert the sort of medieval life and medieval medieval kind of aesthetic and things like that, but they were very picky about which parts of medievalism they wanted to celebrate, and unfortunately quite a few of them decided that to live as medievalism meant being chivalrous, and yet in their everyday lives they were very, very much not chivalrous. They were very very cad-like. I mean, you know, some were better than others, but some were definitely not good guys. I'm looking at you, Rossetti. But they do have a lot of credit for some certain things. So they sort of their work and their, you know, their theories, their mores, their belief systems, I suppose, were very much instrumental in giving rise to the arts and crafts movement. So William Morris himself was actually very, well, sort of close with Rossetti, and they sort of encouraged the re-emergence of certain, not lost traditions, but traditions that were not as prevalent as they used to be. So they started using things like egg tempera for their paintings and things, and that was very unusual, but it you know, created a re-emergence of that. And then with William Morris, he was very much into the idea of the medieval peasant and the idea of creating handicrafts using the skills of and materials and things as a peasant would have done. But of course he had to do it the hard way. He had to try and go back and rediscover. Sorry about that, my phone decided to die on me just then. But yeah, what was I saying about the Pre-Raphaelite? So I mean, yeah, William Morris, being the slight madman that he was, decided that the only way to learn about handicrafts, including like weaving and embroidery and all that sort of stuff, and how to dye his own cloths and how to print his own wallpaper and all these sort of things, was to literally go back to the drawing board, go back to scratch and learn from nothing. He did have like experience. He went to like a traditional printers and things like that, but he decided to learn how to make these natural colours and natural bits and pieces all by himself, because of course he was the clever Western man who knew how to do all these things, because he was cleverer than all those people who did it every day anyway. But yeah, that's not to doubt, you know, the things that he made in the end and the things that his factory made, but, you know, maybe it would have been a bit easier if he'd have recognised the skills of people who were already doing the things that he was trying to learn about. I don't know. But then also, forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, the other thing was also that he had this sort of egalitarian idea that people were going to make their own things and live in small villages, and everybody was going to have their part, and everybody was going to be productive, and everybody was going to, you know, make things for each other, which is all very well and good, except for the fact that he was selling his stuff to the very much richer folks in society. He didn't have any money issues. Well, yeah, initially he did, but he worked it off, and he, managed to make his companies very successful, mostly because they were selling to, lords and ladies and princes and kings. One of his designs is called the St. James's design, is a huge piece of yellow patterned wallpaper, which I don't know if you know about the drops of wallpaper. So the drop of a wallpaper is how big an area you have from the top to the bottom before you get a repeating pattern. He had the drop for the St. James's wallpaper of over 1.5 meters, which is quite a long drop. It shows you that this St. James's wallpaper was designed for a very big room in a palace, and in fact it's named after St. James's Palace. So yeah, you can see the kind of clientele he has. So not necessarily quite as egalitarian, not quite as folksy and homely, and recognising the skills and the needs of everybody. More just, well, I'm going to sort of steal this idea and use it to promote the idea of the arts and crafts movement, because everybody should be living like this, but nobody is. So the people who can afford to live like that can afford to have my wallpaper. But there you go. Right, I am nowhere near my half an hour for this one, but I'm going to stop it there because my phone is acting up. I'm recording this on my phone, and I'm going to have to go and deal with that. But also, I am just doing a buttonhole stitch, which is a little bit repetitive, so I don't really want to bore you guys too much. Not too much anyway. But yeah, it's a fascinating part of history to look at, and it's worth having a look at where all these bits and pieces come from. But it's really interesting, the number of people who come into the gallery and they just want to see a famous painting by people whose names they recognise, without engaging with what is going on there, because there is an awful lot of not so good stuff going on behind the scenes. However, the other thing that I do like to point out to people is the use of egg tempera in some of the paintings by the Pre-Raphaelites and by the schools that were learning from them, because it is a fascinating process, and nobody realises that what they're looking at is just coloured eggs on a screen, on a canvas or on a board. It is fascinating, especially it's interesting to do sort of people watching of folks as they come through and seeing how they interpret what's on the canvas, on the walls. It is fascinating. Anyway, I'm going to end it there. I really do like how that's looking, and I'm looking forward to doing this all the way around. Going to have to finish off this area here. Hopefully I'll get some time to finish this all off this weekend, because it is Easter weekend, and hopefully I'll be able to get back on with this on Monday morning as well. So let me know what you think of that down in the comments, and let me know what you think of my Sashiko project so far as well. And whilst you're down there, please remember to like and subscribe and all those lovely little things that help a tiny channel like mine to grow. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So thank you very much again for watching, and bye-bye.